Now, the process of reconciling invoices and incoming payments is tedious and labor-intensive, especially if done manually. A Kenyan fintech has come up with an innovation that is changing how businesses manage the debt owed to them. This is by automating the process of reconciling incoming payments and invoices, as well as accounting and supply chain operations. Our reporter Wairimu Njenga spoke to John Kiptum, the co-founder and CEO of Chappie, about workflow automation, and this is how the discussion went.
Good evening and welcome to today's program, and tonight we'll be speaking to John Kiptum, who is the CEO of Chappie. As we very well know, many local companies are still using traditional, manual and time-consuming way of reconciling incoming invoices, rather incoming payments into invoice data, and he has come up with innovation that can be able to simplify that process for you. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much.
Maybe before we delve into what Chappie does, we can start from the fintech space in Kenya. We have seen Kenya becoming an innovation hub in Africa. Like, where do you see Kenya in the next few years?
Thank you so much for having me this evening. I think Kenya is a hotbed of innovation, as has been stated before. And the reason is we have a proper education system, we have a lot of innovative young minds, we have a young population, our economy is growing very fast, and the world is becoming a flat place. What that means is that our technology, our innovation, our talent is now very marketable globally. We can see a lot of large businesses, the likes of Microsoft, Oracle, really setting up a base here in Kenya. And we look forward to partnering with such organizations to be able to showcase our talent, our skill to the world.
Okay. Let's now talk about Chappie. What is Chappie and how did you come about starting this company?
We're going to be about 3 years old very soon. We started through an accelerator program called Antler. They're based out of here in Nairobi, but they work with a lot of young innovators across Africa. Having met my co-founder, Kennedy, in this program, which is a 14-week process of just understanding how to build a business, how to sustain it, how to do marketing, finance, and all the functions that come with growing a business. And so after going through the program, a lot of ideation, testing out ideas, speaking to a lot of potential customers, understanding what their key problems are when they're running their businesses, and that's how Chappie came to be formed. Because we understood that in the finance and accounting functions, there's a lot of manual processes that occur in the back office. And so our big role was to try and automate and digitize these particular functions, specifically to address things like reconciliation, payables processing, and financing for large businesses as well as small businesses.
So you have extensive experience in data analytics, banking and risk management, and that is where you came in with your co-founder and founded Churpy. Tell us a little bit about your background.
For the last probably 16 years, been out here being employed as well as being self-employed. My background is in banking. Spent many years at Citibank. Also spent a lot of other years consulting for banks across Africa. And the whole idea was for those particular financial institutions, how can they better manage their risk environments? Because banks handle money. When there's a risk event, likely money is leaving the bank in not a so good way. Now, I have other two co-founders. As I mentioned, Kennedy. His background is in analytics. He's a maths graduate from Harvard, but I also have James, who was my colleague at Citibank, heading up payment operations for Citibank. Now, those sort of sets of skills is what is enabling us to solve this complex problem. It's not an easy problem, it's quite complex. It has aspects of risk management, aspects of analytics, because you're comparing a lot of data. It has aspects of software engineering, for which myself and James, my other co-founder, we are software engineers by training. So now we combine all these skill sets to try and say, okay, fine, can we speak to finance people? Can we speak to IT guys? So that we can now bring technology in finance and then innovate jointly. So our sort of background has given us the firm base and foundation to be able to build the business from the ground up.
Okay. Now, B2B payments remain a challenge in many emerging markets, especially in Africa. And we have seen the process of the high cost rather involved in processing of these invoices. How are you bringing this cost down as Chappie?
Think about it. When an accountant or a finance individual comes to the office in the morning, their first major role is just to have a position on their accounts, their bank balances, what's outstanding, how do we need to collect our money. That's all they do in the first thing in the morning. What that entails is that they have to look at their bank statements. They have to download those from their particular banks. So suppose you have 2, 3, 4 banks, you have to log in, download a statement, and then start to manually prepare this statement, because you need to see who has paid you. Because from that information, then you can match that against invoice data, basically outstanding due to you. And so that process is usually highly manual. It takes very long. Probably 50% of an accountant's day is spent just ensuring that every transaction in the bank is received and receipted. Now, with our innovation, we enable that to happen instantly. So as soon as you receive money in your bank account, we're able to capture that information, go to the accounting system, because we've integrated quite a number of accounting systems such as SAP, Sage, QuickBooks, addressing different segments of the market. And from that perspective, then we can be able to instantly alert you that so-and-so has paid. You can receipt them. You can then proceed to offer service to that customer, as opposed to the process which then usually at what you call month-end close would take a very long time. So right now, instantly, we're able to provide you with an accurate status of your accounts, of who owes you, how long they have owed you at any point in time. We've partnered up with quite a number of banks in this market. These are also continental banks, the likes of Citibank, the likes of KCB, the likes of NCBA, because we know customers have to work with banks. But as well, M-Pesa is, of course, we cannot ignore M-Pesa. It's such a large mover in this market. A lot of SMEs that constitute about 90% of our economy in terms of just providing that support to the whole economy. So we've connected and partnered with those particular financial institutions, as well as Safaricom.
Maybe you can give us an example. Let's say you're working with KBC or any other company where they want your services. Tell us how you will go about this process.
We spend a lot of time ideating and sitting with the customer, understanding their process, because we need to understand who's your customer. How do they like to pay you? Do they like to pay you by mobile money? Do they like to pay you by bank? How many banks is KBC, for example, banking with? Let's say three large banks, which means they can receive money in any of those banks. And within those bank accounts, you find that they have quite a number of particular accounts, sub-accounts, what you call sub-accounts. So after understanding that particular process, where we know how they receive this money, we also understand how do you invoice your customers. Is it digitally? Do you send a physical copy? And then how do you record these invoices? Do you use an accounting system? So you'll find that KBC, for example, has an accounting system, what you call an ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning System, that all these transactions are recorded. So after understanding that particular process, then we map out those particular banks. We connect to those banks through what you call application programming interfaces, or ordinarily what in the market is called APIs. Because from that perspective is when we can receive the information from the bank as soon as money hits your bank account or your mobile money accounts. And so as soon as we receive that, we then start allocating and posting those transactions in an accounting system. And after that, then KBC, which probably has a number of people who are supporting these processes, will be better enhanced to augment them, to start thinking about how can we do forecasting, how can we do variances, to understand budgets versus what was actually planned for spending, to run around liquidity planning. How much am I supposed to pay at the end of the month? That can only be made possible if you understand your position today of how much money you have in the bank, who owes you how much, so that then you can start doing follow-ups. So we are really moving accountants to the next age, which is providing value to the business.
As I was reading through what Chappie is all about, I saw you have a product called SaaS product. Tell us more about that product.
Thank you so much. So SaaS stands for Software as a Service, which basically means when you're going to consume a Chappie service, you don't have to invest in any hardware, in any software, in any human resource capacity from a technology perspective. The biggest challenge when it comes to this particular space that we are working with is the lack of technical skills to implement exactly what you're doing. And these software engineers, who are called software engineers, to be able to build applications that run on top of these accounting systems are quite an expensive resource. And not every organization can afford a software engineer because they want to automate and digitize these particular functions. So that's what we work with, to ensure that those particular software engineers provide what is exactly needed to automate this particular process.
During the 12th Connected Summit, you were awarded for being among the top innovators in fintech by ICT Authority and Oracle. Maybe you can share with us, how was that for you as the CEO and co-founder of Chappie?
It was quite an exciting moment for us. It was a validation that the problem we're trying to solve in this market actually exists, not only for small, medium businesses, not only for large businesses, but right now with what government is really focused on to digitize its operations in businesses, will also include an aspect of internal innovation in those particular finance and accounting functions. The way we understand it is that every business, whether small, large, will require a process where they have to collect money, where they have to account for this money, where you have customers, where you have invoices, where you have payments. And just aggregating all these things together to solve that problem really excited us, because then during the Connected Summit, they actually recognized this as one of the pain areas to be able to bring businesses to the next level. And after being awarded, we've had an opportunity to now get into digitization with the government of Kenya, trying to work with public, what you call sagas, state agencies, government agencies, so that now we can out-innovate internally with them to be able to prepare for this upsurge of where the public now will get into the digital process, send transactions digitally, make payments from the comfort of their homes. But what that means is how are they going to respond to that growth suddenly of digital transactions coming to them. You also have to be ready from finance and accounting perspective to receive that money, to reconcile, so that the public can consume this service and these goods without necessarily having to again show up in an office to be able to prove payment and provide a document. That will no longer be the case. And so that's why I think during the Connected Summit, we were able to recognize that this is a problem that needs to be solved.
And the government is very vocal when it comes to digitizing government services and records. Government says by June we'll have 3,000 services and records digitized. Are you chipping in a way as a Chappie to ensure that some of these services and records are digitized?
We are chipping in a big way, although it's a silent role. You will not see us out there saying we are on our website, we are receiving payments. We sit down with the heads of businesses, heads of processes, heads of finance, heads of IT, because we have to figure out, as soon as we have all these thousands of customers, the public, sending money, what are we going to do about it? And so there's quite a lot of work that is currently going on to just bring them to speed by updating some of the accounting software, trying to innovate on top of this accounting software. So not necessarily having to buy a new software, is just to see how can we then automate the process of receiving this data from the bank. How do we then alert the customer that thank you so much, you've received your payment, please go ahead and consume a service. So it's quite an exciting moment for us. We are, I think, in the right space right now to try and solve together with, for the public sector.
Last year you raised about $1 million in seed funding. Now how has that helped you to maybe expand across Africa and also streamline cash management across Africa?
The thing is, when you're growing a business, you need that seed capital. That's the one that gives you the impetus, the growth prospects, hiring more staff members to just try and see, okay, does this work? So after presenting this idea to a number of investors, and as you mentioned clearly in the starting stage of this program, there's a lot of focus on enabling innovation. And so if you look at Kenya, for example, there's quite a lot of money that has been pumped into this market to try and bring this innovation to the world. So this 1 million was exactly what that is solving, is to say, can we hire another 10, 15 people who are fully Kenyans and they are based out of here in Nairobi, so that we can solve our problems the way we know best, with context in mind. And so that is what it has enabled us. Now, in terms of growth prospects, we are looking at large markets such as Nigeria, South Africa, and Egypt, specifically those 4 countries, in the next 3 years, so that we can then expand out and also solve these problems for other sectors of this African economy.
Chappie is also set to roll a working capital financing product targeting small to medium enterprises applying to enterprise customers. Can you tell us more a little bit about that?
Assume we walk into a large business and we access the accounting system, because remember, our software connects to accounting system. So we're able to write into the accounting software, we're able to pull out data out of the accounting software. So a good example would be the sort of data that we pull out of the accounting software is like invoice data. So for a large business that has a lot of SMEs supporting a large business by providing raw materials, those kind of small businesses, small medium enterprise businesses require working capital finance, because you supply goods, you have to wait for 30-40 days to get paid. What we work as Chappie, we provide this information to financiers such as banks and capital houses, and we tell them, look, there's an SME here who has supplied proper goods, it has been approved by the large business, they want some additional capital to be able to provide more goods. And so what Chappie does is just provide the information. The financiers will come in, provide financing to the SME, because then he's paid in advance. He goes back to the market and continues supplying to these large enterprises. It's about 400 billion gap in terms of SME financing in this continent. And what Chappie is doing is just to play in our space to provide sufficient data so that decisions can be taken from a credit perspective, and then lending can then be given to these SMEs. So we are really empowering that SME sector with financing.
And this will address a significant gap when it comes to credit faced by SMEs, right?
Sure. Mm-hmm. So we have to find innovative ways of providing information to financiers so that they can see this data. So ordinarily what an SME would do is provide a lot of paperwork, a lot of what you call collateral, because they want debt from the bank. But working with a large institution, a large corporate, the corporate will then guarantee this debt. So the SME is paid in good time, and it gives also the corporate some breathing space to be able to settle these invoices in 60 or 90 days. So in a large way, we are playing in that space.
Well, that has been John Kiptum Juma talking to us about reconciling payments and management of payments across Africa. And he is the CEO and co-founder of Chappie right here in Kenya. This is a fintech, a Kenyan fintech innovation. My name is Wairimu Njenga. Back to you in studio.